here's Glenn Greenwald with Tucker Carlson. Tucker is in Brazil, and Tucker was basically doing a fanboy thing for fascist President Jair Bolsonaro, who, by the way, if we could show the image, Colin, Tucker made sure to stand with Bolsonaro with a native headdress, which is insulting, I could tell you, as somebody who reported extensively at the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, for any white person, I don't care what the context is, to be wearing a native headdress. But there's Tucker, not a white supremacist, never talks to white supremacists, never does anything white supremacy, standing with a native headdress with President Jair Bolsonaro. Here's Glenn, who, by the way, was almost imprisoned by the president of Brazil, who tried to censor Glenn for his credit to Glenn, his great journalism that exposed the corruption of the Brazilian courts that railroaded Lula and falsely imprisoned Lula, and Bolsonaro's role in that. Bolsonaro's government went after Glenn. They tried to imprison him. There were ample threats to Glenn and his family. Here's Glenn on Tucker Carlson while Tucker Carlson tries to whitewash Bolsonaro.
But the question of American media is important here because Bolsonaro, no matter what you think of him, relies pretty much exclusively on American-owned tech platforms, Twitter specifically, to get his message out. Doesn't that make him totally vulnerable to censorship by American companies?
Well, he has been repeatedly censored by big tech platforms. He, when speaking about COVID, was often censored. When speaking about the upcoming election, is often censored. So Facebook and Google are essentially dictating to Brazilians what they can and can't hear, including from their own democratically elected president. And again, no matter what you think of Bolsonaro, you should have to think that that's a pretty serious problem. And I think it's a very similar dynamic to what has happened in the U.S., where the entire establishment essentially united against Trump. And so all these institutions that liberals and the left in the United States have long held with such contempt, neocons and the security state and corporate media, all united against Trump. And suddenly they were viewed with such favor by the American left and by American liberalism. That has happened to a large extent here. A Brazilian leftist will now often talk about Globo, long worst enemy of the Brazilian left, with a lot of gratitude and admiration. Yeah, it's the major media company that has become completely hostile to Bolsonaro because, again, Bolsonaro ran on a platform of anti-establishment challenge and defiance, and that's not what his government is, but just the rhetoric itself has made the establishment turn against him.
Putting aside, I can't speak for Glenn. Just because I'm criticizing Glenn, it doesn't erase done great journalism, won a Pulitzer, terrific reporting, obviously, on the NSA surveillance, his great reporting on Brazil and the corruption. Two things could be true at once. Somebody could have journalistic skills and do great journalism and suddenly become a hack. So I don't take away his journalism. He's done great journalism. But taking away the fact that you're literally sitting there and nodding for your BFF there, Tucker Carlson, to somehow make the president of Brazil the victim. Oh, he's a victim of American censorship. The fact that Glenn Greenwald, I don't know if he just has no self-respect for himself, or he's such a sycophant for Tucker Carlson, and he knows that if he loses his Tucker Carlson primetime spot, where else is he going to go? I mean, he goes on other right-wing shows from time to time, but Tucker is certainly his biggest audience. There's definitely a link between going on Tucker Carlson and an increase to Glenn's, Substack subscriptions, social media following, et cetera, et cetera. Putting aside the fact that you're literally sitting there nodding and going along with the whitewashing of Bolsonaro, not even mentioning, I don't know, he tried to censor you and your journalism. That's like me, who's reported extensively about former governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, who, by the way, charges were just dismissed against for presiding over the poisoning of Flint. And if that governor tried to go after me for my reporting, and I won't get into details, but there has been efforts to go after me behind the scenes, not just by Governor Snyder, but others, that would be the equivalent of him trying to go after me, imprison me, and me going on Fox News and nodding along that, oh, he's such a victim of censorship. Besides him not mentioning, I don't know, Bolsonaro tried to censor you by imprisoning you for journalism. I mean, you don't have to be a Brazilian. It's like a basic Google search. Bolsonaro is all he's about is censorship. Colin, Rolling Stone, censorship is alive and well. Marina slams Brazilian government attempt to silence musicians. On Saturday, a Brazilian political official ordered Lollapalooza, Brazil, to ban political demonstrations from its future events after Marina and other performers shared their distaste for the country's government on stage the night before. Note, the Welsh artist is speaking out against artist censorship. Censorship is still alive and well, she wrote on Twitter Tuesday, referring to the electoral judge's order calling for a $10,500 fine for any artist who uses the Lollapalooza stage to address politics. Marina and Pablo Vittar were among the artists who were named in the judge's order after speaking out against the country's far-right president, Jair Bolsonaro, during their sets at Lollapalooza, in which the official called propaganda and premature campaigning. Brazil's election is set for later this year. Marina tweeted, censorship is alive and well. Bolsonaro's lawyers have petitioned to the Supreme Electoral Court to stop artists from making political demonstrations due to me and two other artists voicing opinions at Lollapalooza. So many of us are sick of these old men who think they own the countries they lead. They don't own anything, and they are weaker than we think. Gee, you would think, a free speech absolutist like Glenn might have mentioned that in a discussion about Bolsonaro being a victim of social media censorship. But there's also more. There's more. Bolsonaro has also tried to censor human sciences targeted by Bolsonaro, censorship and persecution. Even before he became president of Brazil, Bolsonaro was outspokenly against human science subjects that promote critical thinking in schools and universities. The president recently announced Abraham Weintraub, a minister of education, a man who claims he intends to decentralize investment in the country's philosophy and sociology schools to focus on the areas that generate immediate return, like veterinary, engineering, and medicine. Wow, sounds like Ron DeSantis trying to take over public education in Florida. Then you have censorship cases in Brazil under Bolsonaro multiply. There have been almost 200 occurrences since 2019, says organization that monitors freedom of expression. Significant censorship cases have marked the cultural scene just 5 months into the new year. The federal government and some city governments tried to avoid political demonstration by the artists or to withdraw such works from circulation. This is the visible part of 195 cases of a curtailment of art recorded since 2019. That is during the term of Bolsonaro. The data is from Movimento Mobile, a network of organizations that work in defense of artistic freedom. Wow. I don't know. With free speech absolutists like Glenn Greenwald, who needs enemies? Besides the fact that you're sitting there nodding along with your BFF Tucker Carlson, who I guess is your right-wing meal ticket for your Substack, your social media following, et cetera, you don't challenge him. You don't point out, hey, we should also point out that Bolsonaro himself is a major censor. He's tried to censor the sciences in Brazil, the cultural arts, musicians, artists. Oh, and me, and imprison me. There's a reason for this. There's a reason that he doesn't bring any of these things up. There's a reason he didn't even bring up the fact that Bolsonaro was trying to censor him with imprisonment, because he knows the audience he's playing to. Now, I'm not telling you to cancel him. Watch him if you want. Read his work. Subscribe to his Substack. It's not for me to tell you who to support. You don't have to listen to me all the time. Don't blindly follow anyone, including me. But it's just laughable that people would watch a segment like this where Glenn is somehow making Bolsonaro. Yes, Bolsonaro did threaten Greenwald's family. That Glenn is somehow making Bolsonaro a victim of censorship. The Brazilian media covers him endlessly. A victim of censorship when his regime has done nothing but try to censor dissidents, political dissidents, the scientific community, the artistic community, not even mentioned. Not even mentioned. And have some self-respect. The man tried to prison you. You had threats to your family. Not a mention. Not a mention. Honestly, it's laughable. And who was the first guest after the Buffalo shooting on Tucker Carlson's show to whitewash Tucker Carlson and his daily monologues sounding identical to the shooter's manifesto? Glenn Greenwald, who was outraged that anyone was bringing up Tucker Carlson and his white replacement propaganda in the same sentence as this shooter. Now, I never said Tucker Carlson was directly responsible for what the gunman did, because that would be irresponsible. But it doesn't matter whether he was directly responsible for what the Buffalo shooter did. It is kind of a story when the #1 television news host in ratings, when his nightly monologues, which the New York Times reported and investigated over 400 times, he had segments on the white replacement or great replacement, the same thing, sounds kind of identical to a mass shooter. It's a joke. And you want to know something? People like Glenn, there's channels that are sycophants to Glenn. There's channels that don't call him out on this shit because him coming on their show, gives them views, this and that. They don't want to get in bad stead with Glenn. I don't really give a damn if he comes on or not. But this is a bigger thing than just Glenn Greenwald. There's a real toxicity online, not just on the left, all around, that people literally have blinders on, because they hero worship certain journalists and certain hosts. They have blinders on, complete blinders on, because they worship Jimmy, Glenn, others, where they can't look at things objectively anymore. And they say, oh, he's done great journalistic things. That's fine. You could give him credit for that. But also open your eyes now. Something has changed. And I think this tweet kind of says it all. Colin, if we could show the tweet. Somebody on Twitter wrote, no mention that Bolsonaro tried to imprison you or that he tried to silence you seems relevant to a conversation about press freedom and censorship in Brazil. Why didn't you bring those topics up? Oh, that's a pretty good question. I've talked many times about Brazil's attempts to criminalize my journalism by Bolsonaro's justice minister, as has Tucker. Oh, yeah? I'd love to see that. Beyond his show, he recorded a video denouncing such attempts. But there's more to say about a major country of 230 million beyond what happened to me. What? So it's no longer relevant, the person responded, when you're talking about press freedom in Brazil? I mean, it's so preposterous. Of course he didn't bring it up, because Tucker Carlson was in Brazil standing for Bolsonaro and trying to prop up Bolsonaro because he's up for re-election. And right now, the polls are not looking good for Bolsonaro against Lula. That's what Tucker Carlson's mission is in Brazil, to lift Bolsonaro up and help him get reelected. You think he's just in Brazil to highlight Bolsonaro's good deeds? Glenn knows that. But this person makes a good point, to which Glenn says there's more to a country than me. The topic in that clip was about censorship, was about Bolsonaro's censorship, or Bolsonaro being a victim of censorship. I didn't choose the topic. Tucker Carlson brought it up. You are the free speech absolutist, right, Glenn? You're the censorship guy against censorship. Well, you conveniently left out that this man is a giant authoritarian censorship king, or wannabe. Glenn, for someone that's pretty anti-censorship, here's Glenn in 2018 and his writings in 2018 about censoring Bolsonaro's son. Would you look at that? Numerous Twitter users, in responding to Bolsonaro, posted the Snopes debunking article and also indicated that they have reported the city council member's false tweet to Twitter. Posting a fake pamphlet explicitly designed to incite hatred for LGBT people is without question a violation of Twitter rules. Hateful conduct: you may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. Hateful conduct includes behavior that incites fear about a protected group. Twitter has thus far not only failed to suspend Bolsonaro's account, but has also allowed the fake post to remain. In the meantime, Bolsonaro, responding to objections that he posted fictitious material, added more claims asserting the false and disproven link between gay men and pedophilia, including one from his dad asserting the same link and another with photographs purporting to be of gay men holding signs advocating for pedophilia. Gee, Glenn Greenwald, 2018. Sounds like he's calling for Bolsonaro's son to be kicked off Twitter. Sounds a lot different than the Glenn Greenwald of 2022 now, doesn't it? Core principles. There's some who have them, and there's some that are flexible. That was Glenn just a few years ago. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.